Hello guys, welcome to our very first session under our rapid revision program. So as I already explained to you in our previous program or the previous introductory session, so we are going to understand each and every area in your syllabus with the relevant clarification and also the application part, especially using past papers. So under this discussion, we are going to first start with one of the most important area under your syllabus, which is on activity based costing, right? So we are starting with one of the most important area in your syllabus, which is the activity based costing, right? I will take this way. Activity based costing. Activity based costing, or we call this as ABC, activity based costing. So I hope you have learned various costing method, and especially in your previous levels you may have learned what we call absorption costing. Okay, so previously I am pretty much sure you have learned absorption costing, and this activity based costing has emerged as an alternative to the activity based absorption costing, right? First you need to, I will just revise you on the absorption costing part. If you can remember, absorption costing, in Sinhala we call this as I think what I can't remember exactly the Sinhala term, absorption costing, podukara pirive antargrahane, something like that, ne? Okay, so what is mean by absorption costing? What is mean by absorption costing? Then activity based costing තේරුම් ගන්න කලින් ළමයි ඔයාලට තේරුම් ගන්න වෙනවා absorption costing කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා. First you have to clearly understand what absorption costing is, which we have discussed in previous level. Okay, so under absorption costing what we did, basically we selected some of the cost centers in an organization. For example, A, B, C. Some of the cost centers are what we call service centers. Okay, some of the cost centers were service centers as well. Then what we did? Then we take or we accumulate overhead under each of the cost center. Okay, we accumulate overhead under each of the cost center. In this accumulation process, there is kind of allocation as well as apportionment. I hope you can remember. This is in your previous syllabus. Okay. Then absorption costing වලදී උනේ ළමයි ඔයාට තිබ්බා පිරිවෙන මධ්‍යස්ථාන cost centers. So මේ cost centers වලට ඔයාගේ overhead එක accumulate කරා. දැන් හිතන්න ABC කියලා cost centers තුනක් තියෙනවා. ඔයාගේ ආයතනයේ තියෙන overhead. Overhead means we are incurring these expenses in general, and we cannot trace these expenses to a particular product. Therefore, we call this as overhead. So these overheads are accumulated to each of the cost centers, of the organization, and then what we are doing? We are taking the total of each cost center, and then we are absorbing these costs to product based on a selected what we call absorption basis. Okay, අවශෝෂණ පදනමක් තෝරගෙන ළමයි ඒ අවශෝෂණ පදනම හරහා ඔයා මොකද කරේ? ඒක හරහා ඔයාගේ products වලට ඔයා cost එක absorb කරන එක තමයි absorption costing වලදී උනේ. Right? I hope you can remember. I am not going to discuss this thoroughly. Okay, so this has some limitations, because when it comes to the absorption costing, we are just taking a kind of one measure for each cost center and then try to absorb the respective cost to our product. Okay, please understand this kind of costing is required if the organization is manufacturing more than one product. If the organization is manufacturing only one product, we don't need any kind of special costing system. What we need to do is, we have to simply take whatever the total manufacturing cost divided by the number of units. But if an organization is manufacturing more than one product, then we should have a proper way to assign the overhead cost to that product. The reason is that direct cost can be directly traced, maybe direct material, direct labor. But when it comes to the overhead cost, it cannot be directly traced. As a result, what we have to do? As a result, we should have a proper way to allocate this overhead to our whatever the product. Say we have a product called X, we have a product called Y, we have a product called Z. Traditionally, we use absorption costing. To allocate this overhead to these products X, Y, Z. But this has limitations. Actually what happens means, these products consume various resources. So the consumption of resources lead to the cost. Therefore, always the product overhead cost should be allocated or absorbed actually based on the actual consumption of resources. This actual consumption was not represented by the absorption costing. ඒ කියන්නේ ළමයි සරලම ගත්තාම ආයතනයක නිෂ්පාදිත කීපයක් එහෙම නැත්නම් භාණ්ඩ කීපයක් නිපදවන වෙලාවකදී ඒ භාණ්ඩ කීපය කොහොමද අපේ ආයතනයේ ඕවර්හෙඩ් වලට අදාළ රිසෝසස් කන්සියුම් කරන්නේ? අන්න එහෙම ඕවර්හෙඩ් වලට අදාළ රිසෝසස් කන්සියුම් කරන පදනම අනුව තමයි අපි කොස්ට් එක හරියට බෙදන්න ඕනේ. හැබැයි ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන්නේ absorption costing වලින් ඒ දේ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. That's why I am just giving an overview actually. That's why what we have to do. That's why we have selected or we have started using absorption costing. That's why we have started using our activity based costing. Activity based costing. So under activity based costing, what we are going to do? Under activity based costing, we are going to absorb our overhead to a unit of product based on the kind of activity. So you have to understand this activity based costing context properly. Please understand, Lamai, at corporate level, you should think like a management accountant. You have to understand the context, and based on the contextual understanding, you should apply your knowledge. That is the key to success. Therefore, please follow me. So when it comes to activity based costing, what we are going to do? Actually, in activity based costing, I am just revising the concept. I will give you some explanation later. Okay, in activity based costing, we are following some steps. The very first step is identify the major activities. So in an organization, there are various activities. So we have to identify the major activities actually. We have to identify the major activities. We have to identify the major activities. So that is the first point. The second point is, or the second step is what? Then we have to identify. I will explain those things, don't worry. The second step is we have to identify the factors which cause the cost of those activity. Then the second step is we have to identify factors which cause cost. So we call these factors as cost drivers. We call these factors as cost drivers. Cost drivers. Cost drivers. And then we have to see the third step. Then we have to to collect the cost associated. We have to collect the cost associated with each cost driver into the cost pool, right? So we have to collect cost associated with each cost driver into cost pools. And finally, we have to charge the cost to product on the basis of their usage of the activity. We have to charge the cost to product based on their usage of activity. Simply, this is the 4 step that you have to follow. In the examination, you may not be required to follow all 4 steps because it depends on how the question is presented, but you have to have the understanding about this context. So let's try to understand the context within a few minutes because I am not trying to take this session too long, right? Okay, the first one. In an organization, when we are manufacturing a product, the product can have cost like this: direct material cost, then direct labor cost, and overhead cost. This is how a product cost take place. මෙහෙමනේ ළමයි product එක cost එක හැදෙන්නේ. එතකොට මේ cost එකේ when comes to direct material we don't have any issue. When comes to direct labor we don't have issue. But the thing is, when comes to overhead, there is an issue on our side. Why? Can we directly identify the per unit of overhead cost? Overhead per unit එකකට අදාළ overhead cost එක ළමයි අපිට directly identify කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? No, we can't. That's why we used absorption costing. But due to the limitations in absorption costing, definitely we have to find an alternative. The alternative is activity based costing. Activity based costing එකේදී අපිට කියනවා මුලින්ම මේකේ principle එක තේරුම් ගන්න. Activity based එකේ principle එක තමයි ළමයි cost එක ඇති කරන්නේ activities වලින්. In an organization, we are performing various activities. Those activities lead to the cost. That is the first point you need to understand. That's why we have to identify major activities that cause cost. We have to identify major activities that we are performing in an organization which lead to the overhead cost. That is the very first thing. That is the very first thing. The second step is we have to identify the factors which cause the cost. දැන් මේ activity එකක් ගත්තාම මේ activity එක ඇතුලේ ළමයි එක එක factors තියෙනවානේ. ඒ factors ටික අපේ factors ටික අපි බලන්න ඕනේ මේ cost එක ඇති කරන. දැන් example එකක් විදිහට as an example if you take the purchasing of material, that is the activity. But during this purchasing of material activity, there can be like what is the main factor that create cost? Number of purchase orders. Whenever you are, for example, in an organization, just assume we are having an activity called purchasing of material. ආයතනයක මිලදී ගැනීමේ ක්‍රියාවලියක් තියෙනවා. So whenever we are purchasing more or whenever we are placing more and more orders, our purchasing cost will go up. Therefore, we can identify the number of purchase order as the factor that will cause the cost. ඒක නිසා මේ major activity එකට අදාළව cost එක වැඩි වෙන්න බලපාන ප්‍රධාන සාධකයක් අපි අඳුන ගන්න ඕනේ. So that is this factor. We call this as cost driver. The third step is then what we have to do. Now we identify the activity. Then we identify the cost driver. Then we have to collect the cost associated with each cost driver into the cost pool. What is mean by this? Under each activity, we have to do what? Under each activity, now we have identified the activity now. Under each activity, the relevant cost we have to accumulate. We have to accumulate the relevant cost. That is the third step. We have to accumulate the relevant cost under each activity. And the final step is charge the cost to the product based on their usage of activity. So in activity-based costing, we are charging the overhead cost based on their usage. That is the point you need to understand. I know just going to these theoretical or theory areas won't work. You have to identify this with a kind of practical scenario. That's why in this session we are just reminding you some kind of theory area, and then we are directly move into a past paper or a paper question so that you can understand how we can apply activity based costing. Okay, so this is the essence. So with that, let's try a question. So I have selected December 2023 question number 2, December 2023 question number 2, so that we can understand this. Okay, so this is December 2023 question number 2, right? I hope you can see this. Okay, so this is December 2023, yes, 2023 question number 2, right? So this question has been based on activity based costing principles, and your knowledge in activity based costing is necessary to successfully go through this question, right? So let's go through the question. See, 𝐂𝐜𝐜 Products Limited produces a range of product in several production units. Okay, now the company is 𝐂𝐜𝐜 Products Private Limited, no? Yes, 𝐂𝐜𝐜 Product Private Limited කියන company එක ළමයි a range of products. අන්න බලන්න අපේ criteria එක satisfy වෙනවා. What is that? I told you that these costing methods are necessary if an organizations manufacture more than one product. එක product එකක් හදන්න ඕන නම් ළමයි මේ මහා ලෝකෙට මැරීගෙන වැඩ කරන්න ඕනේ. What we can do is we can simply take the total cost and we can divide it by the number of units. But when it comes to more than one product, those products are consuming resources in an uneven way. Therefore, what we have to do is we have to clearly understand how we can allocate our overhead cost to each product. So now we are going to solve this. In this case, they are telling the production unit at 𝐶𝐷 pre-trade zone makes 3 products using state-of-art machines, new technology. Product cost is currently calculated using absorption costing. See, they are currently using absorption costing, with indirect overheads being absorbed on a machine hour basis. This company is using absorption costing, and they are using machine hour as the basis for absorbing their overhead. The directors have now decided to evaluate product cost based on activity based costing. Now directors are worried that this absorption costing is not going to work any longer. Therefore, we have to have a better way to absorb our overhead cost. Therefore, they are considering activity based costing. So you are working as the management accountant of EPL. That is the significant thing. Now you have to think as the management accountant of this company. That is the crucial point. And have been assigned to carry out this task. You were able to obtain the following information for the month of November. So these are the information, or these are the details that have been provided to you. And now you should start thinking as the management accountant, right? So they have given 3 product P, Q, R. Then selling price per unit has been provided. Then direct material cost, direct labor cost, indirect overhead. Likewise, they have given and total cost per unit. In this case, I believe this indirect overhead per unit has been obtained using absorption costing. දැන් මම හිතනවා ළමයි මේ question එකේ දීලා තියෙන විදිහට indirect overhead per unit කියන එක මෙයාලා අරගෙන ඇත්තේ absorption costing වලින්. Why? Because in absorption costing, what they are doing? In absorption costing වලදී තමයි මෙයාලා use කරන්නේ. ඒක නිසා මේක දැනට තියෙන information එක අරගෙන තියෙන absorption costing වලින් කියලා අපිට assume කරන්න වෙනවා. Right. Then they have given some kind of other details. See, when it comes to product PQR, the budgeted production volume is there, machine hour per unit is there, then number of production run, number of sales order, number of deliveries of material. Likewise, there are various information. And then see, indirect overhead relate to three different cost activities, namely machine running, setup and material handling. Accordingly, the budgeted indirect overhead of this particular unit for the month are as follows. Okay. Now they have identified three major activities and the related cost associated with each activity has been provided. And also they are mentioning the machine can only run for 880 hours. The machine can only run for 880 hours each month. Right. Okay, so let's move to the next part of the question. So this is the question part, the required part. See, the requirement is compute the profitability of each product. Compute the profitability of each product in accordance with what? In accordance with activity-based costing. The second one, provide suggestions to the management based on your finding in part A above that will support the determination of the optimal product mix. Now, it is not a game. You are the management accountant, or tamai management accountant. So, as the management accountant of the organization, you should compute the profitability of each product in line with activity-based costing principle. That is the first thing. The second point is you have to provide suggestions to the management based on your finding about the optimal product mix. You should advise your management. So these are the products that we have to manufacture. You have to advise on that. I hope you are clear about the question and all the stuff. Okay. Now you have to apply your knowledge on activity-based costing. So the very first thing is you have to compute the profitability of each product in accordance with activity-based costing. So let's start with that. Okay. So I will take you to the computation. Okay. I will take you to the computation. So I will take our computation here. So now we are going to discuss December 2023 question. December 2023 question number 2. December 2023 question number 2. The very first thing in this question is to calculate what? Is to calculate the profitability of each product using activity-based costing principle. Now, as per the given details in the question, you can see they have given the selling price per unit. They have given direct material cost. They have given you direct labor cost and also indirect overhead cost per unit. Please understand, we have the issue with this indirect overhead. Why? We do know that when it comes to a product, direct material and direct labor cost can be directly traced. අපිට ළමයි කෙලින්ම direct material cost එකයි direct labor cost එකයි හොයාගන්න පුළුවන්. We don't have any issue with that. ඒකනේ අපි ඒවට direct cost කියන්නේ. ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන්නේ indirect cost එක. එයාලා දැනට indirect cost වලට පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ absorption costing principle එක. හැබැයි දැන් management එක consider කරනවා activity based costing principle එක. අපි දැන් බලන්න ඕනේ activity based costing principle එක අනුව කොහොමද මේ product වල profitability එක determine වෙන්නේ කියලා. So that's what we have to do. Now, so let's try to work out on this. Now I am going to in a question. So you have to follow a proper approach. So I will take this way. Okay. So first part, we need to calculate the profitability of product. Profitability of product. Profitability of product. So as per the question, okay. Okay. In the question now they are discussing about three products P, Q and R. So I will take these products separately. I have a product called P, I have a product called Q, I have a product called R, right? So in the question they have given us the relevant selling price. So in order to calculate the profitability, we need the selling price. So I will take the selling price. If you look at the question, the selling price of product P is 350 rupees. I am extracting these details from the question. And the selling price of the product Q, they have given as 550 rupees. And the selling price of product R, it has been given as 450 rupees per unit. So I am directly extracting these details from the question itself. Then from this selling price, we have to deduct the related expenditure. We have to deduct the related expenditure. So I will start with direct material. I don't have any issue with direct material. Why? We can directly trace this cost. When it comes to direct material, it is 55 rupees for product P. 55 rupees for product P. It is rupees 75 for product Q. And it is 110 for product R. It is 110 for product R, right? So these are the direct material cost. These are the direct material cost. Then we have to take the direct labor cost. Then we have to take the direct labor cost. It has also been given. ඒකත් දීලා තියෙන ළමයි. ඒකත් ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එකකට අදාළව එක යුනිට් එකකට අදාළව පැහැදිලිව වෙන් කරලා ගන්න පුළුවන් නේ. ඒකත් දීලා තියෙන්නේ. So what are the direct labor cost? For product P, it is 40 rupees. For product Q, it is 62 rupees. It is 62 rupees. And for product R, it is 65 rupees. For product R, it is 65 rupees. So those are the direct labor cost. It has also been provided. Direct material cost is there. Direct labor cost is there. Now the next important thing is indirect overhead cost per unit. Then we have to take the overhead cost per unit. In the question, overhead cost per unit has been provided, but the issue is that overhead cost has been determined in line with absorption costing principle. The question is to determine the profitability of the product based on activity-based costing principle. Therefore, what you have to do? Therefore, you have to find the overhead cost associated with each product in line with activity-based costing principle. Once you find it, what you can do? Once you find it, then only you can calculate the profitability of a product. Once you find it, then you can find the profitability of the product. Right? So this is the challenging area in the question. මේක තමයි දැන් question එකේ තියෙන challenging area එක ළමයි. So we have to resolve this challenge. Otherwise we can't go ahead with this. Okay? We have to resolve this challenge. How can we do? For that purpose, you have to apply your knowledge on activity-based costing, and for that we have to do some kind of working. The exam එකේදී ළමයි හැම වෙලේම උත්තරේ කෙලින්ම ගන්න බෑනේ. Sometimes you may have to do what? You may have to do some working. So I am going to do some working to find this. The activity-based costing principles වලට හැටියට එක යුනිට් එකක overhead cost එක කීයක්ද කියලා අපිට හොයන්න වෙනවා ළමයි. අපිට හොයන්න වෙනවා, right? So now I am going to do that. For that I am taking a working here. Sorry. Working, right? Now if we go to the question again, see, now in activity-based costing, if you can remember our 4-step process, first we have to identify the major activities. I have written down it, okay? We have to identify the major activities. See, in the question itself, it is mentioned that indirect overhead relate to 3 different cost activities. Cost activities තුනකට අදාළ වෙනවලු. The first one is machine running. the second one is setup, and the third one is material handling. දැන් බලන්න අපිට question එකේ කියන දේ තමයි මේ indirect cost අදාළ වෙනවලු ප්‍රධාන cost activities තුනකට. පළවෙනි එක machine running, the second one is setup, and the third one is material handling. අන්න පළවෙනි step එකත් එක්ක align වෙනව නේද ළමයි? The very first step is to identify the major activities. We don't want to identify the major activities because the examiner has done it for us. Examiner ළමයි ප්‍රශ්නේ ඇතුළේම අපිට දීලා තියෙන major activities තුන. So it is done. The first step is major activities, it is done. Activity based costing වල පළවෙනි step එක තමයි අපේ overhead cost එක ඇති කරන activities ටික අඳුර ගන්න එක. ඒක කරලා තියෙනවා. There are 3 activities. Accordingly, the budgeted indirect overhead of this particular unit for the month are as follows. Okay, before that, we have to identify the second step is what? මේ major activities වලට අදාළව we have to identify the cost driver. We have to identify the cost driver. අපේ cost එක drive කරන්නේ මොන factor එකකින්ද කියන එක. So we have to identify the cost driver. So what are the cost driver? So when it comes to machine running cost, what should be the perfect cost drivers? Then when it comes to setup cost, what should be the perfect cost driver? And also when it comes to material handling cost, what should be the perfect cost driver? In the question, they haven't specifically mentioned that. Question එකේ specifically mention කරලා නැහැ. Your skill is to identify the cost driver aligned to each major activity. දැන් මේ තෝරගත්ත activity වලට ගැළපෙන cost driver එක identify කරන එක examiner ළමයි ඔයාගෙන් expect කරනවා. අන්න ඒක select කරන එක ඔයාගේ තියෙන skill එක. ඔයාගේ තියෙන theoretical knowledge එක apply කරන එක. See, when it comes to machine running, see, these are the given details. They have given us the machine hours per unit and budgeted production volume, number of production run, number of sales orders, number of deliveries of material. These are the given details. Then machine running cost කියන එක ගත්තාම when it comes to machine running cost, what would be the ideal cost driver? So when මේක හිතන්න ඕනේ මේ විදිහට ළමයි. ඔයාගේ cost machine running cost එක වැඩි වෙන්නේ මොනවා වැඩි වුණොත්ද? එහෙම නැත්නම් machine running cost එක අඩු වෙන්නේ මොනවා අඩු වුණොත්ද? Okay, that's what you have to think. What is the factor that lead to increase your machine running cost? Or what is the factor that lead to reduce your machine running cost? See, if you take machine hours per unit, just assume if you increase the number of machine hours, will the machine running cost increase or not? Yes, it will increase. Therefore, for machine running, the best, based on the given details, the best cost driver is machine hours. You have to identify that, machine hours. The second one, setup cost. Setup in the sense, you know, especially in organizations when they are doing kind of batch production, for each production batch, they have to do some kind of setups in their machinery and all the production scheduling. So it is a kind of, it is mainly related to batch production anyway. It is related to number of what? So setup cost means kind of maybe we have to fine tune our machines, we have to do some cleaning or all the stuff. දැන් ඒ කියන්නේ එක production එකක් ඉවර වෙලා ඊළඟ production එක වෙනකොට ළමයි අපේ machineries fine tune කරන්න වෙනවා, machineries වල cleaning කරන්න තියෙන දේවල් තියෙනවා නම් ඒවා කරන්න වෙනවා. අන්න ඒ වගේ වැඩ කරන්න වෙනවා. So for that we have to incur setup cost. So what is the factor that drive the setup cost? Or what is the factor that lead to increase the setup cost or lead to decrease the setup cost? Just assume if the organization has more production runs, what will happen? Will the setup cost increase or not? අපි ළමයි වැඩියෙන් අපේ production runs කියන්නේ හිතන්න batch එකකින් වැඩි batches ගන්න. දැන් හිතන්න bakery එකක් කියලා. bakery එක ළමයි පාන් හදන්නේ batches විදියට. එතකොට එක batch එකක් හදලා ඊට පස්සේ අනිත් batch එක හදනකොට අපි තෝ මොන හරි ඔය cleaning වගේ වැඩ ටිකක් කරන්න තියෙනවා. I will take a very simple example. එතකොට ඒ වගේ වෙලාවක මොකද වෙන්නේ ළමයි? ඒ වගේ වෙලාවක ඔයා වැඩිපුර පාන් හදන batches ටිකක් කාණ්ඩ ටිකක් වැඩිපුරෙන් හදන්න ගත්තාම ඔයාගේ ඒ cleaning cost එක වැඩි වෙනවද අඩු වෙනවද? වැඩි වෙනවා. Therefore, the ideal or the most suitable cost driver for setup cost is what? Number of production runs. Based on the number of production runs. Number of production runs. Based on this, our setup cost will change. Whenever the production runs are increasing, our setup cost will also increase. Okay, therefore, setup cost is also the cost driver for setup is number of production run. Then the next one is material handling. In the organization, we have to do some kind of material handling. Okay, so see, for each product, what is the most important thing? For each product, there are various sales orders or deliveries of material. What is the suitable cost driver? Then material handling කියන ළමයි දැන් products වලට අදාළව අපි material issue කරනවා සහ ඒ materials move කරනවා. අන්න ඒකට අදාළව අපිට දරන්න වෙන පිරිවැය. එතකොට ඒ වගේ වෙලාවකදී ළමයි අපේ මේ පිරිවැය වැඩි වෙන්න එහෙම නැත්නම් දැන් අඩු වෙන්න බලපාන ෆැක්ටර් එක මොකද්ද? sales order වල ලොකු සම්බන්ධයක් අපිට දකින්න අමාරුයි. හැබැයි see number of deliveries of material. Whenever our number of material deliveries are going up, our material handling cost will go up because material handling is dependent upon the number of material deliveries. So we can identify number of deliveries of material as the cost driver. Number of deliveries of material. Number of deliveries of material as the cost driver. See, in this question, this is very important because the examiner has provided you with the major activities. That is totally fine. But the examiner has not provided you with the cost driver. It is up to you to find the cost driver which earns mark for you. Right? Therefore, in order to proceed with this question, it is utmost important to identify the cost drivers. That is the thing you need to understand. Okay. Then you have to identify that is the second step in ABC, activity based costing. Then the third step, in the third step, we have to collect cost data into cost pool. Collect cost data into cost pool or collect cost data under each major activity. We don't want to worry about that in this question since the examiner has given that, see, under machine running, they have accumulated the cost of 7,920,000. Under setup cost, they have accumulated the cost of rupees 8.3 million. And also under material handling cost, they have accumulated the cost of how much? Cost of rupees 4.9 million. Rupees 4.9 million. Okay, I hope you can see this. Okay, 4.9 million. Okay. So that is the third step. So you don't want to perform the third step. It has been given by the examiner. So easy. Then the fourth step is what? Fourth step is you have to charge the cost. You have to charge the cost to the product. You have to charge the cost to the products based on the consumption of the activity by each product. So that is the final step which you are expected to perform under this question. Right? Now we have to do that. Now we have identified the major activities. Now we know the cost driver. Now we have pooled or we have collected the data under each major activity, and based on this we have to charge the cost to the each product. That is the thing you need to understand. So that's what we are going to do. And also please see, the machine can only run for 880 hours each month. That means there is a kind of limitation. For the limitation, so we have to be very careful with the limitation as well. Right. So with that, let's try to work out this. Okay, I am moving to our working sheet. So we know in this question what we have to do is we have to find the overhead cost per unit for each product. We have to find the overhead cost per unit for each product. So that's what we are going to do. For that, in activity based costing, the very first thing is what you have to do. In activity based costing, very first thing is you have to find cost per cost driver. Please understand properly, I am explaining now. Now in this case, I will take a format like this for my working number 1. Okay, I am going to find overhead cost per cost driver. එක cost driver unit එකකට ළමයි මගේ overhead cost එක කීයක්ද කියලා හොයන්න යන්නේ. So see how I am going to do that. For this, I have to identify the relevant activity. Relevant activity, we have identified the relevant activity. That is the first thing. Then I have to take the cost associated with each activity. I can take it from my question. Then what I have to do? Then I have to identify the cost driver. Then I have to identify the cost driver. I have to identify the cost driver. So I have already identified. Then I have to identify the number of units of the cost driver units. Number of units related to the cost driver. And I have to then take cost per cost driver unit. See carefully how I am going to arrive this. Right. As per the question, we had 3 major activities. The very first activity was machine running. The very first activity was what? It is machine running. And if you look at the question, lamai, in the question, they have given us the machine running cost as rupees 7,920,000. I am not again going to the question. You can refer to the question. Okay. So the machine running cost is 7,920,000. Rupees 7,920,000 is the cost that we have collected under this machine running activity. So this is how we are operating under the ABC. Activity based costing වලදී ළමයි හැම වෙලේම activity එකට අදාළව අපි cost එක recognize කරන්නේ. Right? Then we have to identify the cost driver which we have already identified. අපි දැනටමත් machine running වලට අදාළව cost driver එක recognize කරලා තියෙනවා ළමයි. What is that? It is machine hours. Machine hours කියලා අපි දැනටමත් recognize කරලා ඉවරයි. We have already recognized that. Then what we have to do? We have to see the number of units related to this cost driver. What is the number of units related to this cost driver? What is that? If you look at the question, in the question it is carefully mentioned. It is carefully mentioned that, see, the machine can only run for 880 hours each month. එක මාසයකට ළමයි machine එක run කරන්න පුළුවන් කොච්චරද? පැය 880ක් කියලා කියනවා. So it is clearly mentioned that we can run only for 880 hours. We can only run for 880 hours. Okay. In addition to that, you can find it an 880 hours. So we can take that. That is the number of units related to this. 880. Now see carefully. For machine running, the total cost is 7,920,000. And the number of units or the machine hours is 880. Now here we are going to calculate the cost per cost driver. It is calculated in this way. How you can calculate? So I will take more space here. Sorry. I need some space here. Okay. So my total cost is 7,920,000 divided by the number of machine hours. So machine hour is the cost driver. So cost per cost driver is how much? You can calculate 7,920,000 divided by 880. It is rupees 9,000 per hour. 9,000 per hour. This is the machine running cost. Okay, this is how we are determining machine running cost. In the same way, you can calculate the second activity. The second activity as per the question is what? It is the setup cost. It is the setup cost. Okay, you can directly trace it from the question. As per the question, the setup cost is rupees 8.3 million. Setup cost is 8.3 million. And we have identified the cost driver as production runs. Production runs. Now you have to see how many production runs that we are expecting to perform in a given month. See how many production runs that we are expected to perform. In the question, see, when it comes to P, product P, it is 35. When it comes to product Q, it is 40. And when it comes to product R, it is 25. Now you can take the sum of these three. P කියන product එකේදී ළමයි අපි production runs 35ක් කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. Q කියන product එකට එනකොට ළමයි අපි production run 40ක් කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. And R කියන product එකට එනකොට අපි production run 25ක් කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. Now you can take the sum. All together, we expect to run 100 production runs. So you can take that as the cost driver. You can take that as the cost driver. So the number of cost drivers is 100 in this case. 100, right? So production runs we are expecting to, for setup cost we expect to incur 8.3 million. That is for 100 production runs. 100 production runs. So you can take the cost per cost driver in this way, 8.3 million divided by 100. 8.3 million divided by 100. So what is the value? If we remove last two decimals, the value would be 83,000 rupees. 83,000 per production run. 83,000 per production run. So this is the second activity. See, you have to calculate cost per cost driver for each activity. That is the approach. That is the approach. In the same way, you can calculate. In the same way, you can calculate the cost per cost driver for the third activity. So the third activity, lamai, it is material handling. As per the question, the third activity is material handling. තුන්වෙනි activity එක තමයි ළමයි material handling. In the question, it is mentioned that the material handling cost is how much? It is 4.9 million. As per the question, the material handling cost is 4.9 million and we have identified the cost driver for material handling as number of material deliveries. Number of material deliveries. හැම වෙලේම ළමයි ඔයා මේ cost drive එක identify කරගන්න ඕනේ. It is utmost important, right? You have to identify the cost driver properly. It is utmost important. So number of material deliveries is the cost driver and how many material deliveries are there? You have to identify that. How many material deliveries? See, in the question it is when it comes to number of material deliveries for product P it is 8. For product Q, it is 2. For product R, it is 15. See, product R is using so many, highest number of material deliveries. So, what is the summation? 8 plus 2, 10. 10 plus 15, it is 25. It is 25. So, the total number of material deliveries of the cost driver is 25. Now, you can calculate the cost per cost driver. The total cost is 4.9 million. It is divided by 25, which is the number of material deliveries. Now you can calculate 4.9 million divided by 25 is it is rupees 196,000 rupees 196,000 per material delivery. එක material delivery එකකට ළමයි අපි දැන් ගන්නවා cost එක 1,96,500 1,96,500. Right? So this is the very first thing you have to do under this absorption costing. right? This is the very first thing you have to do under the absorption costing, right? Okay. Okay, so this is the very first thing you have to do under absorption costing. That means first you have to clearly identify the cost per cost driver. හැම වෙලෙම ළමයි cost driver එකට අදාළ cost එක ඔයා identify කරගන්න ඕනේ. මොකද ABC activity based costing වල පදනම තමයි හැම වෙලාවෙම අපේ activity එකට අදාළව cost එක අඳුරගන්න එක. That is the basis. Then having do that, what we have to do? Then we have to allocate the cost. Then we have to do what? Then we have to allocate this overhead cost. Then we have to allocate the overhead cost. Okay. Then we have to allocate the overhead cost. So the second working, I am using the second working for that. Overhead cost charging. Now we are going to charge the overhead cost to our product. We are going to charge the overhead cost to our products. That is what we are going to do under the second working, right? Under the second working, that is what we are going to do. Okay, how can we do that? Now we do have 3 products. I will take it here. We do have 3 products. I have product P. So I will take this way. When it comes to product P, I will take 2 columns so that I do the proper computation. Then I will take product Q. For that also I will take 2 columns. And for product R also I will take 2 columns. Okay, I need some space in the Okay. So now I am going to charge my overhead cost to each product. That's what I am going to do, because see, my ultimate objective is to identify the product profitability. So I am going to charge my cost to each product. That is what I am going to do. So I will start with how I am going to do. Now I have 3 different activities. Okay, I have machine running, I have setup, and also I have material handling cost. I have 3 different activities and I have cost for each of these 3 different activities. So now we have to see how we are going to charge this cost to each of the product. I will start with machine running. So please see carefully how we are going to charge this machine running. So when it comes to machine running, we have already calculated the cost for cost driver. එක cost driver එකකට අදාළ cost එක අපි දැනටමත් calculate කරලා තියෙනවා ළමයි. කලින් අපි calculate කරා කීයද? එක පැයකට රුපියල් 9000ක් කියලා. Okay, per hour we have calculated 9000 per machine hour. Our computation is that per machine hour it is 9000. machine hour එකකට ළමයි රුපියල් 9000ක් කියලා කිව්වා. machine hour එකකට රුපියල් 9000ක් කියලා අපිට කිව්වා. දැන් බලන්න machine hours කීයක් ඕනේද? දැන් ඔයා බලන්න ඕනේ product P වලට එහෙනම් machine hours කීයක් ඕනේද? product Q වලට machine hours කීයක් ඕනේද? product R වලට machine hours කීයක් ඕනේද? දැන් බලන්න මේ machine running cost එක ඇති කරන්නේ machine hours වලින්. අපි බලනවා product P එකෙන් machine hours කොච්චරක් consume කරනවද? product Q එකෙන් machine hours කොච්චරක් consume කරනවද? product R ගෙන් machine hours කොච්චරක් consume කරනවද? අන්න activity consumption එක බලලා තමයි ළමයි අපි මොනා කරන්නේද? We are looking at the activity consumption and based on that we are charging our cost. Let's see how they are consuming the activity. When comes to product P, machine hours per unit is 0.005, but they are going to manufacture 60,000 units. බලන්න P කියන product එකේ ළමයි units 60000ක් manufacture කරන්න යනවා. එක unit එකක් හදන්න පැය 0.005ක් යනවලු. එහෙනම් ඔයාට P වලට machine hours කීයක් ඕනේද කියන එක ගන්න පුළුවන් කොහොමද? 60,000. If I take it here for P, it is 60,000 multiplied by 0.05. So how many hours you can take? 60,000 multiplied by 0.05 means you need 300 hours. You need 300 hours for product P. In the same way, you can calculate for product Q. When it comes to product Q, see the budgeted production volume is 40,000. Budgeted production volume is 40,000 multiplied by 0.012. Now you can take the total machine hours required to achieve this budgeted production of Q. You can take 40,000 multiplied by 0.012. It is 480 rupees. It is 480 hours. In the same way, you can calculate for R. When it comes to R, budgeted production volume is 20,000. Budgeted production volume is 20,000 multiplied by 0.005 again. For unit, we need 0.005. So 20,000 multiplied by 0.005 is, it is 100. We need 100 hours. We need how many hours? We need 100 hours for product R. දැන් මේ කැල්කියුලේට් කරේ බලන්න එක එක ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එක machine hours කියන resource එක කොහොමද utilize කරන්න කියලා. Product P is utilizing 300 machine hours. Product Q is utilizing 480 machine hours, and product R is utilizing 100 machine hours. Now you can substitute it here and take the cost charge, right? When it comes to product P, as per the question, so we have calculated as per the question. Now we have calculated product P requires 300 machine hours. Per machine hour we are charging 9,000. Now you can take the total cost charge 9,000 multiplied by 300. එක පැයකට ළමයි activity based costing වලදී machine running කියන cost එක අපි product එකට charge කරන්නේ machine hour කියන base එකෙන්. P කියන product එකට machine hours 300ක් ඕනේ. මේ activity base වලදී අපි රුපියල් 9000ක් තමයි machine hour එකට charge කරන්නේ. So 9,000 into 300. 9,000 into 300 is, it is rupees 2.7 million. You are charging 2.7 million to product P. When it comes to product Q, still the cost charge rate is same, 9,000. How many hours are utilized by product Q? How many machine hours are utilized by product Q? Now we calculated. It is how many hours? I think it is 480 hours, no? It is 480 hours. Yes, it is 480 hours. So you can multiply this by 480. Then you are getting the cost. 9,000 divided by 480 means it is 4,320 rupees. 4,320 rupees. And the final product is R. Still we are charging 9,000 per machine hour. 9,000 per machine hour. How many machine hours are consumed by product R? Product R lamai machine hours kiyak consume karnada? It is consuming 100 machine hours. So 9,000 into 100. 9,000 into 100 means it is 900,000. It is 900,000. This is how we are charging the cost of each activity to our different products. Right? You have to take the cost per cost driver. Then you have to see how many cost drivers are used by each product. Then you have to multiply the cost per cost driver by the number of cost drivers. So this is how you are doing. In the same way, we can calculate the setup cost as well. We can calculate the setup cost as well, right? When it comes to setup, see, the cost driver was production run. When it comes to product P, it is 35 production runs. Q, 40 production runs. R, 25 production runs. So based on the production run, we are going to charge the cost. So let's charge in this way. So we have already calculated the cost driver per cost unit in our previous computation. It is how much? 83,000 per setup. 83,000 per setup. So, or 83,000 per production run. So 83,000 per production run. When it comes to product P, we are performing how many production run? We are performing 35 production run. You can take the cost. 83,000 multiplied by 35, it is 2,905,000. 2,905,000. Right? When it comes to product Q, as per the question, we are performing how many production run? We are performing 40 production run. So 83,000 is the cost per cost driver. It is multiplied by 40, which is the number of production runs per product Q. So 83,000 multiplied by 40 means it is 3,320,000. 3,320,000. In the same way, you can calculate the product setup cost for product R. The cost per cost driver is same. It is 83,000. Rupiah 83,000 lamai eka production run එකකට. Product R වලට යනකොට how many production run? It is 25 production run. It is 25 production run. So 83,000 multiplied by 25, it is 2,075,000. It is 2,075,000. It is 2,075,000. It is 2,075,000. 2,075,000. In the same way, you can calculate. The product overhead charge for material handling. In the same way, you can charge the overhead for material handling. Material handling. So if you look at the question, see, when it comes to number of deliveries of material, so that was our cost driver. Number of deliveries of material කියන එක තමයි ළමයි අපේ cost driver එක උනේ. When it comes to product P, it is 8. Product Q, it is 2. Product R, it is 15. So based on the number of material deliveries, we have to charge the overhead cost to our products. That's what we have to do. So now I am going to do that. We have already calculated the cost per cost driver. That is, in our previous one, we calculated 196,000 per material delivery. 196,000 per material delivery. When it comes to product P, we have done how many deliveries? We have done 8 deliveries. When it comes to, so what is the value? 196,000 per delivery multiplied by 8, which is the number of deliveries. It is 1,560,000. 1,568,000. Right? In the same way, we can calculate for product Q. When it comes to product Q, how many deliveries we have done? It is 2 deliveries, no? It is 2 deliveries. So 196,000 is the per delivery cost multiplied by 2. 196,000 multiplied by 2 in the sense it is 392,000. It is 392,000. In the same way, you can calculate the material handling cost that should be charged to product R. Per delivery, we are charging 196,000. As per the question, you can directly look at the question. As per the question, we have done 15 deliveries. So 196 multiplied by 15 in the sense it is 2,940,000. 2,940,000. Right? So this is how we are charging our overhead cost to each of the product. You have to understand it carefully. Now we have fully charged our overhead cost to each of the product. We have fully charged our overhead cost to each of the product. Now what you have to do is, you have to take the sum of each product. You have to take what? You have to take the sum of each product cost. Okay. So I will take a separate color so that you can clearly see. Now you can take the total cost for each product. Total cost for each product. Total cost for each product. Please take the sum. I am using the second column here. When it comes to product P, 2.7 million plus 2,905,000 plus 1,568,000. So the total is how much? Total is 7,173,000. The total is 7,173,000. In the same way, you can calculate for product Q. It is 4,320,000. Then it is 3,320,000 and it is 392,000. Altogether it is 8,032,000. It is 8,032,000. 8,032,000. In the same way, you can calculate for product R as well. 900,000, 2,075,000 plus 2,940,000. Altogether it is 5,915,000. 5,915,000. So this is the total cost for each product. This is the total cost for each product. Okay, the line is somewhat, I think. Okay. So this is what the total cost for each product. Okay. Now you know the total cost or the total overhead cost that should be charged to each product. Now you know it. The next thing you need to do is what? Next thing. Now in the question they are asking us the product profitability. We are going to calculate the product profitability based on what? We are going to calculate the product profitability based on per unit details. So this is the total overhead cost charged to product P. This is the total overhead cost charged to product Q, and this is the total overhead cost charged to product R. Now you have to calculate the per unit details. For that you have to take the number of units of each product. Number of units related to each product. You can take it from your question paper. In the question it is clearly mentioned. See, when it comes to product P, it is 60,000 units. Product Q, 40,000 units. And when it comes to R, the budgeted production volume is 20,000 units. Based on this, you can calculate you can substitute the total production volume. You can substitute total production volume. So in the question paper, for product P, it is 60,000 units. It is 60,000 units. Product Q, it is 40,000 units. Product Q, it is 40,000 units, and product R, it is 20,000 units. For product R, it is 20,000 units, right? Now you know the total cost for each unit, each product, and also you know how many products that we are going to, how many units that we are going to manufacture under each product. Therefore, you can easily calculate the overhead cost per unit. Overhead cost per unit. This is what you are going to calculate. How can you calculate? You can simply, when it comes to product P, the total cost is 7 million. Total cost is 7,173,000 divided by 6,000. So in the examination, you don't need to show these computations. If you can directly take them from the calculator, okay? So I am doing these computations so that you can understand each and every step. Please understand, right? So 7,173,000 is the total overhead cost charged to product P. That is for 60,000 units. That is for 60,000 units. So divided by 60,000. So my per unit cost is 119,000. 119,000 119 rupees and 55 cents. 119 rupees and 55 cents. In the same way, you can calculate for product Q. The total cost charged for product Q is 8,032,000 divided by 40,000 units divided by 40,000 units. So 8,032,000 divided by 40,000 units in the sense, what is my cost per unit? It is 200 rupees and 80 cents. 200 rupees and 80 cents. In the same way, you can calculate for product R. It is 5,915,000 is the total cost divided by 20,000 units. Divided by 20,000 units. So 5,915,000 divided by 20,000 units in the sense it is 295.75 or 295 rupees and 75 cents. This is the essence of whole exercise. You should be able to calculate, please understand, you should be able to calculate overhead cost per unit of each product. That is necessary for us to calculate the profitability. Now we have calculated overhead cost per unit of each product. Okay. Now what you have to do? Please, now we have done a lengthy working, but don't forget that we do have a question to answer. We have a question to answer. Okay. These are the workings that we have to perform in order to produce the correct answer. What we wanted to find was the overhead cost per unit of each product. Now we have found that, so we have to substitute this answer to our original answer. Okay, we have to substitute this answer to our original answer. So I will take you to our original answer so that I can substitute it there. Okay, this is the original answer. This is the original answer. So you have to substitute overhead cost. Here you have to substitute overhead cost. Now we have already calculated. When comes to product P, I have calculated it as 119 rupees and 55 cents. When it comes to product Q, I have calculated it as 200 rupees and 80 cents. And product R, it is 295 rupees and I guess 75 cents. No, yes, 75 cents. Okay, this is how we are substituting the found overhead cost charge to our final answer. Then බලන්න අපි working වලින් ගත්ත උත්තරේ කියලා මෙතෙන්ට කියනවා. බලන්න මෙන්න මේ උත්තරේ ගන්න තමයි ළමයි වැඩ ගොඩක් කරේ. ABC knowledge එක තියෙන්නේ මෙතන. මේවා අනිත්‍යව simple දේවල්. Now you have to do what? Now you have to calculate the profitability. Now you can simply do a computation. See, when it comes to product P, it is 350 minus 55 minus 40 minus 119.55. So my per unit profit is 135 rupees and 45 cents. In the same way, you can calculate for product Q. 550 minus 75 minus 62 minus 200.8. So my profit per unit is 212 and 20 cents. When it comes to product R, 450 minus 110 minus 65 minus 295.75 minus C, I am ending up with a loss of 20 rupees and 75 cents. Product R is making a loss while other products are making profits. So that is the answer for question number part A of this question, right? That is the answer for part A of this question. In the question, they are asking us to calculate the profitability of each product. Profitability of each product under ABC principle. Here, please understand ABC principle is related only to overhead cost. Okay. So direct material and direct labor can be directly traced. That's why they are becoming direct cost. Okay. Overhead cost has to be calculated based on ABC principle. Right. So I think with that we are completing the answer for part A. In part A, they are asking us to compute the profitability of each product in accordance with activity-based costing. Activity-based costing, it is 7 marks. See, in your examination, how much value how much value you can place for this? 7 marks. Okay. So although I took some time to explain this in the examination, if you have the correct understanding on ABC principles, you can do the computation very fast. Please be mindful on the time consumption, because you have to do this very fast, because this is a straightforward question. Let's move to part B. Provide suggestions to the management based on your findings in part A about that will support the determination of the optimal product mix. You may include any additional computation for this purpose. You have 3 marks. Therefore, don't spend too much time on this. Don't spend too much time on this. What you have to do? Based on your computation, what you have to do? You have to provide some suggestion. What a suggestion? Improvement යෝජනාවක් ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න වෙනවා ළමයි. ඔයාගේ ආයතනයේ optimal product mix එක මොකක්ද කියලා. What is the optimal product mix in your organization? That is the expectation in this question. So this is a kind of you have to do some explanation here, and don't do lengthy explanation because it is just for 3 marks. You can easily take. So I will take you to the question. Okay. I will take part B here. Okay. Now, when you are going to answer this part B, you are going to suggest the management on your optimal product mix. You can clearly see one thing. If you go ahead with product R, it is going to make a loss. It can be clearly seen. So are you going to continue with product R when it is making loss? No. You can suggest the management that we should drop this product R. අපි මේ product R කියන එක drop කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා management එකට කියන්න පුළුවන්. Right? You can suggest management on that. Okay. In the same way, when it comes to product P and Q, for which product we should give the priority? In the question, it is mentioned that machine hours are limited. So you know when there is a limiting factor, how we are going to select the priority. You may have learnt it. Okay. Therefore, please understand, here we are going to discontinue product R because it is loss making. Yes, we are going to continue with product P and Q with some priority considering the limiting factor of our machine hours. So how can we do that? You may have learned it under short-term decision making as well. We have to do a kind of limiting factor analysis here. So I will take you to part B of the question. Now, when you are writing an answer for this kind of a situation, first thing you have to give your suggestion. The very first thing is, so I will write in this way. Product R should be discontinued since it is making losses. Right? So that is the first thing. The second thing, now we are done with product R, we don't want to worry about that. Then we have to see the prioritization of product P and Q. So you can write in this way. Product P and Q should be manufactured in the following manner. So now what you can do? You can do some computation. You can just do a simple computation here. So you have product P and you have product Q. Okay. Now we have already computed the profit per unit. We have already computed the profit per unit of product P and product Q. Okay. When it comes to product P, we have calculated per unit profit as 135 rupees and how many cents? 45 cents, no? 135 rupees and 45 cents. And for product R, 212 and 20 cents. 135 rupees and 45 cents. When it comes to product Q, it is 212 rupees and how many cents? 20 cents, no? 20 cents. Right. So this is the per unit profit. Now we have to see how many machine hours are required to manufacture 1 unit. In the question, the limiting factor is machine hours. So you have to see how many machine hours per unit. In the question, it is clearly given. I am not going again to the question. You can see in the question per unit. When it comes to product P, it is 0.005 machine hours, and product Q, it is 0.012. 0.012. Now you can calculate profit per machine hour. Profit per machine hour. So it is 135.45 divided by, see how can you take that? Profit per unit divided by the machine hour per unit. Okay. So 135 and 45 cents divided by 0.005, it is 27 rupees, 27,090 rupees. Okay. When we are allocating 1 machine hour to manufacture product P, it is yielding a profit of 27,090 rupees. අපි එක පැයක් ළමයි වෙන් කරනකොට product P වල machine hour එකක් product P unit එකක් හදන්න වෙන් කරනකොට 27,090 rupee profit එකක් එනවා. In the same way you can calculate for product Q, it is 212.20 per unit profit. This should be divided by this machine hour per unit. So it is divided by 0.012. So the value is, I think it came some decimal, 17,683 rupees and 33 something like that. We'll take up to 2 decimals, 33 cents. 33 cents. Okay. Now based on this computation, you can assign a rank here. Based on the computation, now you can assign a ranking here. Okay. If you utilize 1 machine hour, product P is yielding the highest return, whereas product Q is yielding the second highest. Okay. Product R we don't want to speak because it is a loss making product. Okay. When it comes to product P, it is when it comes to product P, we have the highest profit, whereas product Q has the second highest or the lowest profit. Okay. මෙන්න මේ විදිහට තමයි ළමයි අපි ranking එක කරන්න ඕනේ. But you can conclude your answer in a nice way. See, you given the initial suggestion, then you see the priority and you can conclude your answer in this way. Product P should be given the highest priority. Should be given the highest priority. Should be given the highest priority. And also you can just add some kind of conditional sentence so that everything is perfect. The above suggestions are on the assumption that no interdependencies among products will exist. So I will take it here, among products, sorry, what happens? Exist. What is meaning by that? Now here we took a very strict decision to discontinue product R, and also we are going to give the priority to product P. These are purely based on what? These are purely based on our kind of computation. But please keep in mind, in actual business sense, when it comes to the actual business sense, sometimes we may have to continue with the product R even if it is loss making. Why? Sometimes it is necessary to consume this product P. Then නිකමට හිතන්න ඕගොල්ලෝ අපේ ආයතනයේ පානුයි බටරුයි හදනවා කියලා. බටර් තමයි ප්‍රොෆිටබල්ම සෙග්මන්ට් එක. හැබැයි පාන් කියන එක එච්චර ප්‍රොෆිටබල් නෑ loss making. හැබැයි අපි පාන් හදන්නේ නැතුව බටර් විතරක් හදලා අපිට ප්‍රොෆිට් වෙන්න බෑ. ඇයි? මිනිස්සු බටර් කන්නේ පානුත් එක්ක. Okay? Likewise, there can be some interdependencies. So we have given these suggestions on the assumption that there are no such interdependencies. That's why I have put a conditional sentence at the end of the answer so that everything is perfect. Right? So this is how you should answer a question like this. This is how you should answer a question like this. Right? So with this, I think we are good to wind up this session, and I hope you got a better understanding about activity-based costing principle. Please understand, activity-based costing is a critical area in the examination, and it is a testable area at your examination. Therefore, please pay attention to this area, understand the theoretical areas properly, and also please go through these whatever the theoretical illustration in your study text or whatever the study material, and please look at how you have to think. In corporate level management accounting, you have to think as a management accountant. Okay, always think like a management accountant with the strong background of the theoretical area. Then you can easily answer whatever the question, you can answer that, right? So with that, we are good to wind up this session, and in the next session, let's see you with another topic. Okay, please pay your attention to all the areas and do your studies well. Goodbye.